I would get that Tinder message or the Bumble message. Hey, what's this outlaw stuff? And then I'd have to explain it. And Lindley was the first one that when I told her about it, she's like, it's an extension of you. So if I care about you, then I care about that, and so I really appreciated that. But yes, every single girl that broke up with me because of, they said literally the outlaw stuff, I can't do it. It's not for me. So.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A Great Conversation here on Nerds and Suits. Today, my guest is John Rocha himself. John is my faction mate in the movie trivia Schmodown, my former rival. I actually originally met John competing against him in Screen Junkies TV fights, so things go back a long way. But today, we are friends. We get to talk about all kinds of cool stuff. His launch of Outlaw Nation, his committing to Outlaw Nation really is his full-time gig after his exit from Collider. What his dad would think if he could see him in the movie trivia Schmodown, what it's like to be called outlaw on the street by strangers, and a bunch of other cool stuff. So enjoy that here. This is the 5th episode of A Great Conversation. The first guest we had was Christian Harloff. We've also had Dan Merle, Anna Pierce, Roxy Stryer, Chloe Dykstra coming up pretty soon here. We've actually got Mark Fernandez coming on next week, which should be a pretty interesting conversation. You guys have been very supportive of this channel. We have one other show that I do every single Wednesday. The show is called Song from the Scene. I pick up my acoustic guitar and I cover songs, great songs from great movie scenes after I talk to you guys about why those scenes are so great. This week I put up Shallow from Star is Born. That was a ballsy one to try. Trust me, guys. You can go check it out right now on the channel. We are well on our way to 2,000 subs. We've been live for about 2.5 weeks. You guys have been so cool with your support. I'm really, really excited about the future of Nerds and Suits. So if you're listening to this for the first time because you saw John Rocha's pretty face, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment below with what you thought about this interview. It would mean the world to me. I'm loving doing Nerds and Suits right now, and I can't wait to bring you guys more cool stuff. At 2,000 subscribers, I've got a big announcement. So help me get to 2K. I want to try to get there by the end of the week. We'll see how we do with that. Otherwise, guys, enjoy this interview with John right now. He kicks total ass with this one. And if you're a fan of John Rocha, I think you will like this interview. I will talk to you guys very soon.
Today I've got a guest that I'm very excited to talk to. And I imagine if you guys are fans of what I'm doing, you'll probably be very excited to hear what he has to say as well. This is someone I've worked with for a long time. This is somebody who I've been at odds with at times in my life, but it's all come full circle, and he's somebody who now I would call a close friend of mine. So I'm happy to welcome the creator of Outlaw Nation, the Outlaw himself, one of the most talented hosts I've ever met in my life, Mr. John Rocha.
Hello, Ben. Very kind of you to say that. Thank you so much, man. I've worked hard to be so, and so it's very kind of you to say that. And yes, brother, we've had our ups and downs. We on the road of our relationship and our friendship, certainly hanging and banging, but it's been fun, and we're back on the good side of things, and been hosting backstage with it, which has been a lot of fun. So just enjoying it.
Yeah, back on the good side of things for now. This interview is at least in the good pocket, so we'll get this one taken care of, and then we'll leave the rest up to chance. I opened up by calling you the head of Outlaw Nation, the Outlaw himself, and it's something I'm curious about. So how when you were a kid probably and you played sports, right? Did you play any sports?
Oh yeah, yes, I played pickup sports. I never played sports in high school, like professional. You know what I'm saying, like team sports.
Yeah. Well, so but you've watched plenty of sports movies, so you kind of know that moniker of like anytime you ever meet like somebody who was a coach, it's like, hey, good to see you, coach, right? Even if he hasn't been a coach for 20 years, you never played for him, right? And it's the same thing if you're like a fighter, right? Good to see you, champ.
Yeah.
So now, not only do people probably call you champ sometimes, you get called outlaw. Like you meet people in life who have never met you before, and they say, hey, how you doing, outlaw? Like that's a thing that someone's calling you. They're not saying it facetiously. They're not saying it as a joke. They're honestly calling you outlaw like it's your name. When you hear it now today, how does it make you feel?
I think it makes me feel very blessed, to be honest with you, and humbled, because it has actually taken off. It has actually been a thing that people connect a certain feeling to that word when they think of me. So when they say hi to me in that way, it's like it's almost become second nature to respond to it. I know my girlfriend, when she first got together with me, she was very taken aback by people walking up to us and going, outlaw, or what's up, outlaw, watch you all the time. Because she was just like, why do they call you that? Like, they know your name is John. I'm like, well, I think they connect that name to something that is through their experience of me. So there's a certain level of weight that comes to it when they say my name. So I just get very moved by it. I'm always like, it just makes me smile because, I had no idea when we came up with this character 5 years ago that it was going to keep resonating the way it does with people now.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I imagine that the difference between how you feel about it now probably and when it first started is all a confidence thing. Because I know you've talked to me a lot about how the last few years of your life, as you've really developed this part of your career, has given you a tremendous sort of surge in confidence that, that maybe you didn't have as much before as you were kind of getting into this business.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of anything, right? You know, I got into the business late. You know, I'm not a 20-year-old kid or 21-year-old kid out of college, fully jumping into this 2 feet and doing it. Like, I came into it much later. So my approach to it was different than most other people. I tried to do as much as possible all the time, much to the chagrin of Christian Harloff sometimes, who felt I needed to slow down. But I wanted to catch up as quickly as possible, get the hours under my belt, because I adhered to that. I think it's Malcolm Gladwell who said 10,000 hours. Yeah, I adhered to that very much so. And at the time when you're going through the 10,000 hours, you don't know when that switch is going to happen, when that button's going to be pressed, when you finally kind of cross that line and you do realize, yeah, I'm actually damn good at this, and not in an arrogant way, in a more like the water is wet and the sun is hot. Like, you just know I'm good at this. If I'm prepared in the right way, I know that I can be good at this. And so your old insecurities kind of fade away, and there's new challenges that come up for you as you ascend to this level.
My experience with the 10,000 hours thing has been, you know, now hosting for 6 years. I don't know if I've hit 10,000 hours. I would imagine so. But when you're doing it and you're in it, it's like trying to watch your hair grow. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you know how good you are at it? I don't know. Like, some days I totally blow it. Some days I stumble on the intro. But the thing that's really blown my mind is, from 14 to 24, I played a lot of music. It was my original dream. It was what I moved to LA to do. I toured. I had the whole thing. And then around 24, 25, I slowed way down, and I didn't play much for about 5 years. And I still had the guitars, and I moved around, but I didn't play much. And so just in the last year, when I've started to play a little bit more, the thing that's blown my mind is it's come back to me so easily. Like, a lot of that stuff that was there before is still there. And I think that's got to be the 10,000 hour thing, where it's like, you do something enough in your life, it's just there. It's innately part of you.
Right. It's muscle memory, right?
It's muscle memory. It's preferences. It's like, I think it's also like spiritual in some way. It's like the way you connect to something. You could never have done something for 10,000 hours if it didn't resonate with you in some spiritual way. You have to connect to it on a personal level, right? Like, unless someone's making you do something, or it's a job, right, that you're just doing for money. But if you choose a trade, like you choose to do something because you want to do that thing, there's nothing that will keep you at it for 10,000 hours unless you've connected to it on a deeper level.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Thoroughly. It's what makes you keep coming back to keep doing it, because you know there's more challenges to overcome. There are more obstacles to get past. There are more mountains to climb. And so you want to get better at it. And, you know, you can hit the 1,000-hour mark and you're like, you know, this is not for me. Like, on camera acting for me wasn't for me. Like, I hit that 1,000-hour mark of doing it the first 15 years here in LA. And I just kind of hit that wall, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to walk on a set and wait 9 hours to say 2 lines, go home, and then I don't even show up in the movie or the TV show or the commercial. So you just kind of hit that wall where, like, what's the point? And so you got to love it enough to give it the 10,000 hours to take the slings and arrows, so that when you get the bigger part, you've earned it. You've got to that position where you can do that kind of thing, and you're comfortable with it, and you're confident, and you don't spiral or anything like that. So it just takes time. But this is something that I always found to be gratifying from almost the first second. And I found a natural ability to it and wanted to keep doing it over and over again. Like I said, passion.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was, you know, I listened recently to your interview you had done with Christian Harloff, one-on-one on Collective Conversation, which is a great interview, by the way. Yeah. If you guys haven't heard that one, go listen to it. You say a lot of really interesting stuff in there, but you tell a little bit of a story about your time in the Army when you talk about, you know, the 8 years you did. And one of the things I've always been curious about is, because I only meet a couple people in our profession who have gone through an experience like that. It's not the most common background for hosts and actors and musicians. Definitely some, you know, the instinct to serve your country. But when you do something like that, like you're around that type of person and that type of structure for that long, are there still a lot of habits you picked up from that phase of your life that you are still just second nature to you today and other things you do?
Yeah, I would think I would have to say it's one of the strongest things I still lean on when things get tough, you know, and things have been tough at times over the last 10 years in my life, or last 20 years in my life. And what I always come back to is, look, I survived that. I overcame that. If I have the strength to have overcome that experience and survived and thrived in that a situation or environment, then what is this? I can overcome this. I can come through this. So there's always been a strong fighting spirit, I guess, within me since I was a kid, but it really got honed when I spent my time in the military, and the tactics that we were taught, not just the physical, the mental tactics we were taught to endure situations when they come up. You can just apply those tactics to whatever situation comes up for you in life versus in the military. Okay, I have to walk 25 miles in these boots with 60-pound rucksack on my back and only one pause at the 13.5-mile or 12, whatever it's 13-mile mark. Okay, that's I endured that, and it was one of the most horrific experiences of my life, but we did it. So when I go into this tough situations, I just kind of rely on that and go, okay, where is my 13-mile mark that I know once I get past this, I'll be able to climb out of it. So yeah, it has served me well. Plus the discipline, the regiment. I'm an early riser for that reason as well, which drives my girlfriend crazy. But I'm up early, trying to prep for everything and trying to get ahead of everything. So
How early?
It could be 5 or 6 in the morning sometimes. I only function on 5 or 6 hours of sleep. I'll go to bed at like 11 and I'm up at 5, or I'll go to bed at 12 and I'm up at 6. That's just how my body works. I only ever need 6, and then occasional night I'll get that 9 or 10 that kind of balances out. But it's mostly 5 or 6, and then I'm up reading articles from the Washington Post, the New York Times, Deadline, a bunch of other sites, a Variety, Hollywood Reporter, whatever's my interest, ESPN. I just read everything. The Ringer, Athletic. I try to read as much as possible. So by 8 a.m., when I'm really going with my day, I feel fully informed about what's going on in the world.
Now, as somebody who's developed a lot of rigid habits and obviously has clung to kind of all those things you just mentioned, because I like to read a lot of that same stuff. I consume a lot of that same content. And I think you and I have a very similar passion for kind of what we want to do. We found that out when I was on Outlaw Nation with you recently. It's very, very kind of in line. But what that means, at least in my life, and you can tell me if this applies to you, is it's hard to find the ability to share that space, because I'm constantly filling it with things that are stimulating me and things that are making me excited and interests that I have and things I want to do, because that's the stuff that excites me the most. Have you struggled at all to bring someone else into your life when you have that much hunger for things to fill yourself with?
It's a good question, Ben, actually. I know that with the Schmodown, which is another thing to add to everything that we do, or both of us know how much time commitment that is. I know when I was first dating, when I was in the Schmodown, I found that it was very difficult to do. I found that the girlfriend or girls that I was potentially interested in or were interested in me would find that stuff and immediately be out and immediately end the relationship or end the dating situation because they felt it wasn't their cup of tea. So that was on top of also building a career, trying to be in front of the camera, write reviews, be a critic, go to movies at night. So there are not a lot of women, I believe, in my life who were easily adaptable to that life. I've been very lucky to find my girlfriend, Lindley, because she is an introvert. She is her own person. She's very strongly her own person, and she understands and likes independence and respects that about me, respects that what I'm doing is to further my career. What I'm doing is to get ahead. What I'm doing is to get better at what I do. So she respects it. She may be sad at times I have to jump off and do an interview or go to a screening instead of coming home right to her from work back when I had the job. But she rolls with it really well because she knows that there are going to be times when she goes off and does a photo shoot for 3 or 4 days somewhere outside our home, and I'm going to have to just accept that and roll with it. And that's the thing that we've found with each other has been the best things, that when we're with each other, we love every moment we spend with each other, but we also are cool when someone has to go and do something else and we can entertain ourselves and it doesn't become like a codependent situation, which has been the problems with other relationships in my life. She's the first one that I haven't needed to be codependent with, yet I feel very secure in our relationship.
You had told me, I think, can't remember when it was really, but maybe it might have been when you were here. I don't have my back surgery. You were helping me out recover a little bit. And I think you were telling me a little bit about some of these stories that some women you were dating had found the Schmodown stuff and deuces, can't do this.
Yeah.
Was it really that simple, or do you think you assign that to it when you remember it? Because do you really think it was, they said that guy with the hat and the mask, I don't want to be a part of this?
They said that. See, and you and I are operating on two different spectrums. A woman in her 20s, which is what you're those are the waters that you're in right now, versus a woman in her 40s or a woman in her late 30s. She sees a dude wearing a mask and putting on a cowboy hat, And she goes, yeah, no, that's not for me. I don't see a future in that. I don't see security in that, but in your 20s, you're still like exploring the world and everything is new and you're navigating and it's cool. And you're like, oh, we'll see where this goes, but when you're 40s, you're very clear about what you want and what you don't want. And so I was discovering that women, even before we would meet up for a first date, because they would Google me, I would get that Tinder message or the Bumble message. Hey, what's this outlaw stuff? And then I'd have to explain it. And Lindley was the first one that when I told her about it, she's like, it's an extension of you. So if I care about you, then I care about that, and so I really appreciated that. But yes, every single girl that broke up with me because of they said literally the outlaw stuff, I can't do it. It's not for me. So,
Did you call Christian every time it happened? Just
no, I would tell him about it when it would happen. But, but I also was like, well, what's my place in this? So I was still navigating it as well. So, but yeah.
Christian would probably say to you, good, it'll give you fire. It'll give you fire. Go out there and win, John.
You'll find that one that believes in you. Don't you sweat it.
Yeah, I haven't had, since I've been a public personality, which I guess now goes back, because even when I was in music, I didn't really have any kind of online, nothing, right? I think it was probably 14, probably around the time I started to build it. And I haven't had any like really significant time in my life where I've dated since it started. Yeah, that's never happened to me, which is interesting because I can't imagine like a stranger being like, yeah, I Googled you and found this. That sounds like an embarrassing and hilarious experience to look back on.
Yeah, it is now. It is now that I've found someone, sure. But at the time, it certainly felt like, God, what do I really want to keep doing this? Because if it's really going to impair my ability to meet the person I'm supposed to be with, then just should I keep doing this? Those questions that you go through naturally. But I kept going back and enjoying because I was getting more out of the Schmodown than I was getting out of these potential dates or potential possibilities for relationships. So clearly that mattered more to me than quitting it. So.
What's the closest you've come to quitting it? Is there a moment that you've had that you were this close to being done forever?
I think you could say like after the first corruption match, certainly we were, Dan and I, at least to me, I was just like kind of done mentally and emotionally after another decision went against me. I took it personal. But I think the closest I've ever come was Orlando. That was legitimately, I was legitimately going to, I know Christian gets mad when I say this, but it's true. Like in Orlando, Lily and I had talked about it. And I said to her, honey, I can't keep dedicating my time to this thing if I can't hang with the guys anymore or the girls anymore. If I can't hang with them, then I shouldn't keep doing it because I don't want to end up being the punching bag that they beat up on their way to the top. I don't want that. And Christian himself had said that to me earlier when I had taken a couple of losses that year. And so when we went into the corruption match, Lily and I had a conversation and I said to her, I'm going to retire if I lose. And she said, okay, baby, if that's what you really want to do, and then I'm all behind it. And I support it. And I think you're right. I think if it's not satisfying you, you need to get to that next level as a host. If it's not satisfying you, you don't need that kind of anchor around your neck as you're trying to get to the next thing. So I had resolved, like, if we were going to lose, I would have walked up to the mic. I know Christian planned the whole heel thing. I was going to surprise him and retire, which probably would have pissed him off, but I think I've earned my right to do my thing after years of giving time and energy to this Schmodown to build it up. So I had a right to be a little bit selfish in that moment and kind of say goodbye. And doing it in a live crowd, I thought would have been a nice experience as well, to be able to say goodbye at the right time. But it's so ironic. Winning that match kind of reinvigorated me all over again and gave me my confidence back to fight, to play. So it's a strange thing how things work out,
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really interesting about the Schmodown is that, we have this tight-knit fan base, this really, really passionate fan base. And it's not the biggest fan base in the world. We don't have millions of fans.
Right.
But we have these really core fans that have really helped all of us build our careers. And I think one of the most interesting things is I look at some of my friends that are on television shows or friends that have more successful models or whatever, then they make more money doing their jobs than I've made playing the Schmodown, but they can't take any of the fan base from the things that they do that make them that money and then turn it into something they own. It's the difference between like these larger opportunities and seemingly really loyal fans is like Schmodown has the best fans in the world. It seems.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen anything like it.
No, I agree with you. And people who come into it are always blown away by the level of fandom they receive once they achieve a certain kind of status in the Schmodown. They're always blown away by how many nice people there are out there who cheer us on and support us. How many nice people out there who've endured the stuff we've endured. When we get personal, we talk about our struggles. They self-identify with us and seeing us achieve goals and succeed. And it's immediate, right? Like they can follow our career and maybe 5 years we'll finally get to where we're going. But when you're watching us in a Schmodown, that is an immediate situation, right? You're seeing wins and losses, successes and failures, all of that. And, in the past, when you lost, it felt kind of lonely. But since the buildup has happened and the fans have really understood the struggles we've gone through and have seen people retire, have seen people get upset on the Facebook groups or on social media, I think the fandom has taken a step back collectively, mostly, and said, oh, we need to approach this differently. And it's been incredible to see how they've rallied around people when they've lost. And when they've won, they've been very happy for them. But when they've lost, even more powerfully, to be like, you'll be back, you'll get them, you'll study harder. This means you just have to focus harder. Whereas in the past, when you lost, people were like, oh, see, you suck, you're overrated, you're no good, la, la, la. And so that's been nice to see that for the most part, I think the fandom has adjusted to kind of take care of us in a way because they know we put so much effort and time into these matches to entertain them.
Well, I think a lot of those fans that were there before, a lot of the ones you're talking about from those days where it would just feel really harsh, they were sort of peripheral fans. They were people that watched Collider content and they would tune into a Schmodown match and they didn't care. They knew you. They kind of knew you as the Outlaw, but they also kind of knew you as John Rocha from various YouTube shows, and they'd want to take shots. And a lot of those fans are gone now. Yeah. And the ones we have left are these amazing ones who are kind of like, I want to be at the nucleus of making this thing special.
Yeah.
Now, I know you've talked a little bit about how special some of these Schmodown experiences have been for you. And one I've heard you speak about a few times was the moment, the LA Live event where you got to do the Outlaw Nation moment, when you were playing against JTE. You've even brought the memory of your father into the Schmodown before when you were playing Mance. I remember watching that early on and thinking, wow, like this guy is really connected to this. Yeah. This goes beyond it. Have you had those thoughts before of what it would be like if your dad could see it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think my dad would have loved it. I think because my dad was a natural competitor himself. Now he did play high school sports. There in Bolivia, he played team sports. I think he was a three sport athlete. He played basketball, football, and soccer down there. So my dad was, sorry, track and field, not American football, track and field and soccer down there. So my dad was very much a competitive person. I think that's where I get my competitive nature from, is my dad. And so I think he would have loved to have seen the things I went through and the struggles I overcame and me studying, blah, blah, blah. And he probably would have questioned me half the time, like, are you sure you want to keep doing this? Are you sure? Like, just to kind of, get in there and make sure that it's something I really want to do, because he was always about, always know why you're doing something. This is something that was really important for him to teach me as a man, as a child and as a man, always. And he kept reminding me, always know why you're doing something. Be very clear about it. That's going to be the difference between you succeeding or failing, is the reason why. And so I think he would have really enjoyed, especially the live event, the first live event, the LA live event, that would have been incredible for him to be there for that. Do you know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, having Lindley there with her sister for the second one we did there when we took on Stacy and Winston, seeing that was the first time she had a glimpse of what my life is legitimately like as the Outlaw. Like she was her sister too, who had no concept of it at all with her boyfriend. And they're very great people. We have great relationships with them. They were just blown away by like the chants and the reactions. And, because I'm very chill when I'm with them seeing me swagger as the Outlaw on the stage with Dan, that was a whole new experience for them.
Was that your favorite Schmodown memory period? Is that first one against JT?
No, it's a good question. It's a struggle because someone asked me this the other day. Like, is it when you beat Dan or is it when you beat corruption? And I kind of thought about it for quite some time. And each moment has a different significance, right? So I think for right now, my favorite Schmodown moment was winning in Orlando. I think there was so much doubt within myself whether it was going to happen. And watching Dan and I go to a gear that neither one of us have experienced together was a hell of an experience, and to kind of be on a little bit of a lesser gear against Shazam because of the fact that I was sick, and still win was such a incredible experience. But the Orlando moment right now is the one that sticks out. I mean, the Dan moment when I beat him was so long ago. I only remember it as like when people put the gifts up, I have a sense memory of it. but I don't hold it as my favorite moment in the Schmodown because so much other stuff has happened since. But I will say the first live event, Ben, is when I did the Outlaw Nation thing. That was the first time where I felt at home with the Schmodown, right? Where I sense the fans do appreciate what I've done, do appreciate what I've created. So I felt welcomed. And that was a powerful moment for me because all of that obviously was improv and I was just feeding off the crowd. And so to sense that power within the crowd and having them go with me when I paused and when I wait and then did my thing, it was so great. And it felt so natural. And it was really moving. So yeah, it's a special moment for sure. I don't know if it's the greatest moment, but it's a damn sure special moment.
Yeah, I remember it. I mean, I remember it vividly. I've told you the story a bunch of times. You know, Drew and I sitting up there on the kind of the side of the stage, not the side of the stage, but in the balcony or whatever, and seeing you do it. And I remember Drew, who, has been a bit of a harsh critic of you at times. I just remember him, and I think we had a feud with you guys going even at that time. I just remember he looked over at me and he was like, "That's a performer." And as Drew is somebody who takes himself pretty seriously as an actor. I mean, he's pretty locked in. Yeah. He's definitely somebody who is, believes in performance as as an art, something that matters. I remember thinking to myself, like, that's like game recognizes game kind of a thing, because I tend to analyze everything somewhere like, from like this, like intellectual level, like I don't connect with things emotionally as often. And so I just remember that moment. But one thing that I've noticed in the Schmodown, because now I've played against you and alongside you since 2017 in the spring. So we're past 3 years now since I first remember talking to you at Collider and you were playing matches. In the Schmodown, when you started, you were the first character. You were the biggest star. You were the Stone Cold, right? And since then, you've stayed relevant. You've stayed a champion. You've stayed on Mount Rushmore, but you've been challenged by all these people that have come in the whole time. Yeah. And in a lot of cases, people that are significantly younger. Has that been a struggle? Just the age thing?
Well, it's only a struggle in this way. I'm a competitive person. So sometimes if you're going to come at me competitive, I forget how old you are. Yeah. And in an outside situation, I can be like, you know what, that's a young man or young woman, like, expressing their energy. And don't you remember when you were 20 years old and you were spraying it all over the place like a machine gun? Like now that you're older, you should be more understanding. But then there's that level of disrespect. And this is something I'm still working through this. And I think it's the last hurdle for me to finally feel complete and at peace with who I am as a person is this disrespect thing. And I have it in spades. And Lindley tries to talk me through it all the time. She tries to get me to read the 4 agreements all the time to really work on nothinging people. And it's not easy for a guy like me who's constructed his life being overlooked or not taken into account or not considered valid or worthy. I've always had to fight for my respect and fight for my place at the table. So when people come to try to essentially take my place at the table, I take it as a personal sign of disrespect. So sometimes the words can get a little too close to home. And so then I react in a certain way. And I think that's where the lines get blurred for some people sometimes, but then I'm quickly past it, but in those moments I'm caught up in the throes of competition. But later on, it's like, oh, hey, are you cool? Are we cool? Is it all right? Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's been weird with the youngins coming in because the youngins want to make a name for themselves.
Of course.
And what do you do? It's like prison, right? You want to go beat up the biggest guy in prison so you can get taken seriously. And I understand that. And once again, we go back to the Orlando conversation. I thought that I was at a point where these young kids were coming in and they were studying in different ways than the generation before that had come in or the class that had come in before. And so I thought to myself, well, if I can't give the time commitment to this, then that I think it deserves, and I'm getting beat by these young kids, I don't want to keep taking the hits. So that was my feeling. But now they invigorate me. Now I like it. It's a new challenge. Okay, what do I know that I can beat them with? And so it's in that way. I think it's kind of I've found a way to come to terms with it that is a positive and can be used as a positive in my career as a Schmodown player.
Well, the irony is, I'm 31 years old. I've been at this thing for 3 years, and I have the same feeling, which is like these young kids coming in there, and sometimes the irony is the young kids are older than me. It's just about youth in the Schmodown. It's like they come in with a different attitude and a different approach, and so I relate to you there.
I'll tell you real quickly. It's been funny to watch you and Andrew transition into this veteran status because you two were the young punk kids who came in rattling all the cages and frustrating people. And certainly I was one of those people that was frustrated at times by it. But you did it that way. But to see the change, and now you're the ones going like, who are these young kids to come in here and tell us what to do? So it's been an interesting thing to watch you guys deal with it, what we dealt with you all. So it's been fun.
For sure. No, for sure. It's also funny too, because we're going back, and I talk about this every once in a while, that we're watching these old matches, these old action matches, Action Rewind, and it's like a Patreon thing we're doing. And as we go through these old matches, it's so bizarre watching these moments where like a bunch of things will happen. It's like, okay, like we weren't that good at cutting those promos. We thought we were great, but that sucked. Or like, oh wow, like this is the first time that we really got put over. You can see like this is a big moment for Team Action. Or like, or like man, like we thought we were so awesome 4 matches in. We thought we were the biggest news in the Schmodown. And then we're like watching it and being like, oh, like we were nothing yet. We were just, we were exciting, but that was it. We hadn't done anything. We hadn't won it all. It's a trip to go back and watch. But you mentioned some of those conflicts, and especially those moments where that next chapter you're trying to sort of move past. You and I had a really interesting conversation about a month ago now, probably 3-4 weeks ago. We had done backstage for a little while together, and there was like this one episode where things seemed to get kind of heated. And I kind of went off on you, and there had also been another episode from a few weeks prior where we had a big text exchange. And so I called Christian, and I was like, because Christian had said to me, hey, I'm going to be stepping away from the show for a while, so you're going to be hosting it. And I was like, oh, but John and I just keep getting into it. And he said, you got to just call John. That's what you got to do. I mean, if you can't talk to me about it, talk to John about it. And so I did. And it's one of the greatest kind of adult moments I can think of, because I felt like I expected a level of defensiveness from you that I didn't get.
Yeah.
I expected and it's not at all. You like listened exactly, and you like responded to every point. And by the end of the conversation, it was like, wow, I really thought this was like this tangled up web. And this is just not. It's like a very clear and very simple.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say about that. I think, how can I say this correctly? I think you had some preconceived notions of what was happening, and which you're absolutely had a right to, because you interpret things as you interpret things as Ben Bateman through his experiences in life, and that's how it works. And so, and I had seen things in a certain way that I was interpreting, that I thought, oh, Ben's trying to big time me, Ben's trying to step on my toes because he thinks I'm going to take over the show or something. I have no interest in that. So I had my own narrative going on in my head. So when you called me and then you were like open about what had been happening, and you were handled in such a professional way, and you presented your own points of view, I was like, oh, this is great. These are the conversations I have learned to have over the last 10 years through my therapy, that has really saved a lot of my friendships, relationships with my family, because you have to cross that Rubicon of like, okay, not everyone is out to get you. Listen to the other person. And so for the last 10 years, I've been really practicing that. And it's kind of led to incredible, deep relationships with my friends that weren't there before. So when you called, I was like, this is what's happening here. Now let's talk it all out and hear the points of views. And I was worried you weren't going to like see my point of view or see where I was coming from. But to your credit, Ben, just like you're giving me credit, you were open to receive it. You were open to hear it and understand it and accept it as truth, and then find the middle ground for both of us as we went along. So, and the shows have been great. The shows have been great since, and they're fun. And there's, you and I aren't cussing at all. When we had been cussing before, we're not cussing at all. We're like chilling out, having a good time. And I'm learning where to jump in to ask my questions that don't step on your rhythm or your way of hosting the show, because I can host a show and I can be the second. I'm adaptable in that way. So it's been fun since that conversation. But yes, I agree with you. Very mature conversation. And that's how, people see me as a passionate guy, blah, blah, blah. But behind that is a real human being. And I just want to be understood. I don't have to be right. I want to be understood. There's a difference,
One of the things you said in that conversation, and you actually just alluded to it just a second ago, is that you think the sort of the least of yourself, that you are constantly thinking that you have not done enough, that you aren't good enough. Like that's the thing you've struggled with. And that even if somebody sees you as this big successful host who's done really well for himself, you struggle to see that. Why is that, do you think?
I think because I never feel like the mountain I never feel like I'm finished climbing the mountain. Like I look at someone like Tiffany, Tiffany Smith, who I feel is farther ahead than I, and I'm like, what did I do? And being let go by Collider, let's be honest, that really dented my pride. It dented my self-confidence in a strong way, because I was like, I did everything I could not to be fired from that place. I learned to write for them. I hosted shows. I produced shows. I went to junkets. I flew to set visits. Anything they wanted me to do. You want to start a sports channel with no support? Boom, I'll start it. Fine. I did everything possible, and yet they still fired me or laid me off, whatever you want to say. And I was just like, well, I guess I don't have what it takes to be at the level that they want to go forward with, And so I see other people who are achieving more or getting in front of cameras more. Like, look at Ash Cross and how she's kind of ascended in her way. And I'm like, see, I still need to get there. So I never feel my journey is done. But what I'm trying to work on, Ben, it's a great thing you bring up, is being happy with what I have now. And these are the things, this is the thing that Lindley and I are working on, is taking those moments to be like, you know what? I'm very fortunate to have, podcasts that people are listening to, Patreons that people are supporting me on, my YouTube channel's monetized and doing okay and building. So it's like, there are little things like that I have to take stock of and practice gratitude for, so that I can, keep moving towards the next level without being this selfish person who wants to achieve this success. Because if I don't do it correctly, Ben, I know this about myself, it'll be hollow. I'll feel empty. And then I'll be like, well, what do I do now? And I think I'll end up like, what's his face? Plainview at the end of There Will Be Blood, shooting stuff in the middle of a big house that's just empty because I'm empty inside,
So John, now you mentioned the Collider stuff just a second ago. And so I'm going to have Mark Fernandez actually coming on this show. Not sure exactly when it's going to air. It might be right after this one. It might be a little later. And he said he kind of doesn't really want to talk about the Collider video stuff because he did the Campia thing and he did the town hall. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot here because I'm not trying to get some kind of reaction from you. But if he was here and he was the third guy in the room, is there anything you'd say to him? Any questions you'd ask? I mean, if you want me to, you can. I'll cut it if you want me to.
No, I don't think so. That bridge was crossed, and I'm moving on and doing what I'm doing. He's doing what he's doing, and that's the end of it. I learned a lot being there, and it was great being there for the most part and learning as much as I could. But the freedom to do my own thing on my channel and not have to stand in line behind other people and not have to be told constantly that other people deserve these opportunities over you, no matter how hard you've worked. I'm happy I don't have to endure that anymore, and I can create my own thing. And I'm getting interviews. I'm getting, name people. I just had Isa Lopez on my show. I got Greg Nicotero coming on for an hour-long interview. I've had great people on my shows, and that'll just keep building and building and building till the outlet, the Outlaw Nation outlet, is strong enough to be able to attract even bigger names and maybe build out my own shows that'll be rivaling anything Collider does over there. So, he's got a right to run his business as he sees fit. He didn't see me in the future of his plans, and so I'm building my own thing here.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I like what you're building over there. I think there was that moment that happened, when you guys all the same day found out that there was no more job at Collider, launched a lot of people doing something I think really exciting. And I think the truth of the matter is, long-term, owning your own thing is, I think, what all of us kind of want anyway. I don't think any of us really want to just be working for someone else our whole life, at least those of us that are creators. And so I think you've done really cool things with Outlaw Nation. Those are great guests, man. I mean, I'm kind of doing a similar thing with this channel, except that I already have Action Industries, which is already kind of developed. That's a very on brand for me now. So this is really kind of more of like my passion project. But I've always wanted to do these one-on-one things. So I was really happy you decided to come on and do this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. You talked about being a reviewer. How much do you miss going to those press screenings? I miss them terribly. I mean, is that something that you miss?
No, I'll be honest with you. Not right now. I think this has been, how can I say this? I think for me, this has been something that we needed to have happen in our world. And I've been saying this on a number of podcasts recently. I think that everyone needed to take a break. The toxicity of the fandom and the critics, that was essentially Thanos versus the Avengers, depending on what side you felt you were on, it was getting way too much. Like the critics were getting lambasted by the fans, the more unruly fans. The critics were blasting the fans, saying that they were a bunch of trolls, and so it just had gotten to the point where it was very toxic. Death threats were coming from fans to critics. Critics were afraid. Critics were adjusting their reviews, which I know for a fact some critics were adjusting their reviews so that they wouldn't get those death threats or wouldn't get those responses that are more vitriolic from the fandom. I heard this from a number of critics at screenings who were saying, like, I hope this is good because I don't want to put a bad review because I'm going to get like terrible comments and people are going to say these things. So there was a fear that some critics, not all, some were going to get lambasted if they didn't like a film that they thought a majority of the fandom was going to like. So that was an interesting thing to start creeping in. So for me, I thought that we needed a break. And I'm not saying that this is a godsend or anything like that, but I feel like this happening now, maybe indirectly, has been a positive for this situation. Of course, that doesn't ignore the amount of deaths and the people who are catching this, and the dangers that are happening. But I'm saying, if you're going to look at something that is a result of this, directly or indirectly, I feel like the fandom and the critics have kind of taken a break from attacking each other, and they're posting about movies or TV shows that they love or experiences that they love, and they're getting positive responses for the most part from the fandom, and critics, and vice versa. Critics are sometimes weighing in on fans' comments about a movie or about something going on in their world. So I think this has been, hopefully, overall a positive thing for all of us to take a break and take a step back from all the fighting, almost like Samuel L. Jackson, and do the right thing. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It just feels like we've all taken a step back. And I hope that when we come back together, start doing these screenings and reviewing and criticizing things of that nature, that people will feel more receptive to it. And maybe critics will be more understanding that there's a little bit of tact that you have to use when you're doing a criticism. Letting your inner anger come out at a movie maybe isn't the smartest way to review a film. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's interesting what you say about critics adjusting their reviews. I've one of the biggest reasons that I like working for myself with these things and not having an outlet that I have to do work for, and I've had it in the past where I've done reviews for outlets, is that I cannot review bad movies. I can watch them and then not have to post a review of them if I don't want to, because I remember I saw Motherless Brooklyn and I really didn't like that movie. I didn't think it was good, and I didn't post a review. I've talked about it in a couple shows here and there, but I didn't do like, hey, I posted on Twitter I was going to see it, but like, I don't want those types of movies to get bad reviews and then stop getting made. I don't want Ed Norton not to be able to get $60 million to make a mid-level crime. I think he should be able to do that. I'd like him and other people like him to be able to spend $44 million with a good cast on an interesting story. That one just happened to suck. But something I want to ask you, because this brings to mind. I think, I can be honest about the fact there was a conversation we had on the show just a minute ago that I'm going to cut out. And the reason I can is because this isn't live.
Right.
One of the things I'm doing on this show in particular is I'm going back to that model, which is something that I think right now on YouTube is pretty uncommon. Most people are doing live content. Everything's live streaming. The majority of your shows, if not all of your shows right now, are live streaming. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Do you worry with your nature to be very passionate, because you are a passionate guy, that doing so much stuff live will eventually get you in trouble? Or does that not really, doesn't bother you?
No, it doesn't actually, because I think I'm a good self-editor when I do these shows. And when I catch myself saying something that might be misinterpreted, I usually immediately follow up and go, no, what I meant to say is blah, 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 and try to clarify it. So I'm very aware of the things that come out of my mouth, because I'm constantly judging as I'm speaking about what I'm going to say. I'm judging myself about what I'm saying constantly when I'm doing it on all these shows. I like the live stream aspect of it all, because I feel more connected to the fans when I do it that way. I like bringing them into, to ask questions onto the Outlaw Nation show, or sometimes the Mornings of the Outlaws. Definitely Game Time. We've done that before as well. The sports show. That's been fun. It's kind of tethered me to the community even more, and seeing the people who are consistently coming to watch or enjoy the shows that I do. But that being said, I do want to start focusing on making more produced content that isn't live, and of course doing patron shows as well for the patrons of my Patreon. But like I see what Dan Merle has done. He just comes out and everything is produced. There's no live stream except that Q&A that he did, and they're getting a crap ton of views. So you go, okay. It is Dan Merle, and he's got two different fandoms that are coming together to give him those views, but that doesn't mean he's wrong to do produced content in this way. Some people like to consume things that aren't like, an hour and a half live stream or a 2-hour live stream, which is what I do in a standard way. So the Star Wars show that I'm doing is my first foray into doing produced content. And from there, I'll start to do more of that as it becomes something that's second nature to me. But I'm not an editor. Dan is an editor. So for Dan, shooting and editing is a natural thing.
Yeah.
For me, shooting and then editing has been a laborious process that has at times been very frustrating for a guy who likes to get results quickly. So for me, that's what I'm navigating now.
His success of his channel has been one of the most remarkable sort of proof of concepts I've ever seen when it comes to the idea of building something for a long time, very, very loyally with one place, and never wavering and never starting your own thing and just staying there, because he was there for like 7 years or something at Screen Cookies, and he finally decides to leave, and it's crazy. The reaction has been unbelievable. I mean, but it's also because Dan is Dan. He's the nicest, most likable guy in the world. What's not to like about Dan Merle?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw on your channel the Dan Merle interview you did very well, right?
Yeah, it's almost 20,000 views. It's definitely the highest watched, besides my first live stream. It's the highest video I have on the Outlaw Nation channel. And here's the thing, and when you're going to leave, you can prepare for that leaving a lot better than when you've been let go, surprisingly, and you've had to kind of figure out how to stand back on your feet afterwards. So that's the one thing that I do regret. If I had known ahead of time what was going to happen, I could have prepped all through the break to be ready for being let go on the first week of January and then hit the ground running with bringing people over, but that's the difference. See, fandom worked with Dan when he said he wanted to go or when they sensed he was going to leave versus, Collider surprising a bunch of us on that day.
Had you ever been fired from a job before or let go from a job?
Oh, sure. When I was 16, I think. And then maybe a few years ago when I did DVD testing. Yeah. But that was just time, the DVD testing thing. I didn't actually have an issue with that, because it was just time and I was not happy there anyway. So when they let me go, I just kind of moved into pursuing acting for 5 years, and I was able to pay my bills with my voiceover, my commercials, and my occasional on-camera acting for theatrical stuff or for TV shows, rather. I was able to pay my bills. So, I mean, for 5 years, I made a living as an actor in this city, which I'd never done. So that was a nice experience. It was almost kind of like a blessing in disguise that they let me go.
I was fired for stealing comic books when I was a teenager from a comic book store. That's my most memorable getting fired story.
Right on.
Guys, we've only got John here for about another 10 or maybe a few more minutes. But I do want to remind everybody here, first and foremost, go check out John's channel, Outlaw Nation. You can check it on youtube.com. I think it's Outlaw Nation or slash.
It's John Rocha Says is what it's under, because they wouldn't give me Outlaw Nation. So it's John Rocha Says, youtube.com/John Rocha Says. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, go check that out. He's got tons of content. And guys, if you have any interest in seeing more of these interviews, we've got a bunch of cool ones coming up. You can check the one with Dan, with Christian. Those have all posted, as well as the show Song from the Scene that I'm doing, which I've done 3 episodes now by the time you see this. And the reaction's been awesome. I've really been loving doing that show. So go check out those videos right now. I think there's a little banner here we go. Let's see here. Yep, that's the one. Don't forget to leave a comment, hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me, guys, if you did that. So you've got You like that? You like that?
I dig it. I just want to see stock markets underneath it after that.
Yeah, I'll start working on that. So I want to move on to movies for a couple of minutes before I let you go, because I know your love of film, you've mentioned, is something that came from your parents. They didn't want you to have the accent. They were very, very intent on you speaking clearly without any kind of accent. So you watched a lot of movies growing up. And so you've cataloged more movies than probably most people have ever met in my life. Aside from the ones that are just like The Godfather or Lawrence of Arabia, what are a couple perfect movies for you that are not the norm?
I don't believe in perfect movies. So
really?
yeah, I don't think there's ever been a perfect movie because we're human beings and we're flawed by nature. So nothing we create is ever going to be perfect. So for me, I don't believe in the term perfect movie. I believe in the almost perfect movie, the near perfect movie, or the perfect movie for me. But I don't believe in a perfect movie because that's an objective term, and I don't think art is objective. So to me, I don't think anything is perfect. I don't think anything Picasso ever did was perfect, and I bet they'd be the first one to tell you that it's not perfect. And so I've always adhered to that, and I'll occasionally say, "Oh, it's a perfect movie," but when I say that, I mean that it's a perfect movie for me. So yeah.
All right. Well, then same question.
Yeah.
Nearly perfect movies that are not
Uh,
classic.
Seven Samurai. Oh, that are not classics. Ooh, that's tough.
I mean, they can, it can be a semi-classic. I just mean like, there's 10 or 20 or 30 movies that are just like those go-to movies, the Shawshank Redemption or the Godfather. They're on every list.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's, 2 or 3 that come to mind that are those movies that you believe are near perfect, but you don't hear about a lot.
Jesus, that is a very tough question. I wish I'd had some prep time on that question. I could have looked through my catalog of movies. Near perfect movies. Damn, man, that's a great question.
We can come back to it.
Yeah, let me think about it a little bit. Top Gun. Bar
Really?
none. Top Gun. Bro, that is my number one film ever made. And it'll never go in my top 10 of like films, but it's in my number one slot of favorite movie ever made.
It is your favorite movie of all time. That's like what I used to say. Point Break was my favorite movie, period. But like, it was not the greatest movie. Wow, Top Gun, really, from start to finish.
Last night, hell yeah, it still holds up. Last night, before we recorded, I discovered this YouTube channel, and of course, it's been around for a while. It's got 1.5 million subscribers, but it's a 4K HD YouTube channel that puts the theme song from the movie and then edits scenes so that you're essentially watching the movie as a music video. And I'm a mad addict to music videos. I have like 350 music videos on my computer that I will watch on plane rides and whatever. But like, and they had the Top Gun one, and it's Take My Breath Away. And I basically relived the movie again for like 5 minutes, and I had a stupid grin on my face. That film was when I transitioned from a teenager into a young adult into a teenager on my way into being an adult. That film it always makes me smile. It always makes me happy. And there is no other film that I put on that brings me back to that sense of wanting to be cool, like Tom Cruise, wanting to be cool, get the girl, and losing your best friend and all of that. So the movie is deceptively deeper than people think, because he's maverick and he's a swaggering kid. But think about this. He's a kid who's the son of a father who's been denigrated his entire life. So you have those moments with him and Goose where he's like, I know when you're up there, you're doing it. You're Pete Mitchell's kid. I know it's tough for you. Blah, blah, blah. So there's so much more going on for Maverick. This whole cool kid shit is a veneer. Underneath is this very scared kid who's just wanting to be accepted by the people who rejected his father. And so it's like this whole journey he's on is that. I mean, him seducing the teacher of the class. And again, that's him trying to get to that status level where he's seen as equal by the people who denigrated his father. So the whole journey for me is an emotional journey. It isn't just jets and, all that kind of stuff. And then he loses the guide who has been essentially his buffer to that stuff. And then he legitimately has to stand on his own, and either he falls apart or he becomes a man. And it's like, and I haven't gone through that experience of losing my father, who was my own buffer to the world. And the person I am post my dad and the person I was before my dad passed are two completely different people. I think people would find a very hard time recognizing that John Rocha before my dad died to the John Rocha that is now. And it matures you in a way that you don't even know is happening when it's happening until after it's done. And that movie does that, and I love that for that.
So even the stuff in the movie that's like the cornball stuff, when
like what?
I mean, it's like, I'm the huge fan of that movie. Just for
I know you are. I know you guys dressed up as, I know.
Yeah, but like even when like one at the end when Tom Skerritt's like, Maverick, give me a call, fly with you anytime. Like that doesn't get you that doesn't make you just like it's you think it's just amazing.
Let me tell you something, bro. You never served in the military. Guys talk like that in the military. It's no bullshit. That is legitimately, they overdo the sentiment. You know why? Because most people in the military aren't that emotionally aware of things. So they just speak in a way that's kind of stunted in bro speak. And so it's their only way to express emotion. Not every military, but there are a lot of people like that in the military. So that's how they speak, you know? Because you look at the other scene where Tom Skerritt says, look, I'm not sit here to blow sunshine up your ass. It was crazy out there. It was all these MiGs or all these bogeys flying around, blah, blah, blah. But when he goes to that moment, he's actually trying to emotionally connect with Maverick, but he knows that he is of higher station to Maverick, so he can't really say what he wants to say emotionally. So it's a stunted thing, you know. So I don't think it's cheesy at all. I think it's very realistic. And I love the volleyball scene. I don't give a shit what people say. I love that volleyball scene, and it's a great song. And
Playing
it's
with the boys, man.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It's 4 young dudes at the peak of their physical abilities playing volleyball, and you know, having a I don't know, a cock measuring party. Essentially, is what they're having. Who's the tougher dude? It's essentially team action versus team top 10. That's what that is. For God's sakes.
It's ridiculous. I love it though. So first of all, one thing you mentioned there that I want to just briefly acknowledge, then I want to move on from this, is that the soundtrack to that movie happened in an era when movie soundtracks, that's like when movie soundtracks started to be a thing. Because like early 80s, I don't think there was one that I can think of right off the bat that was as big. By the mid to late 80s, like the ones that come to mind are Top Gun and Dirty Dancing are probably the two from the late 80s that are like the soundtracks. So that by the time you got into the 90s, if you were a band and you had a song on a movie soundtrack, it was a big deal. It was a big thing.
Yep. Yeah. I would say the history here is you go Saturday Night Fever is the first big soundtrack. That's 1977. Then you don't have too many big soundtracks until you get to Fame in 1980. That's a massive soundtrack in 1980. Then you get to Flashdance. That's also 82 or something like that. That's a big soundtrack.
I think. Yeah.
Oh, 83. Yeah. I'm not good with movie release dates, as you know, Ben. And then you get to the mid 80s and then it just takes off. I mean, that's the age of Kenny Loggins and Phil Collins and all these 80s stars, Kim Wilde, and all these 80s stars, Bonnie Tyler, that are putting Footloose is the other soundtrack that is
84
classic. Yeah. So it started to slowly become, and then the late 80s is where it really took off, and you heard so many great songs on these soundtracks.
Well, that's one of the things. Okay, so the show song from the scene is like, those are big songs, right? Those are like pop songs that matter. You know, like the first 2 episodes were Free Fallin' and Time After Time. But like the songs that were written for the 80s action movies that they would play in the soundtracks, and you'd hear them in the movie and you'd be like, this is obviously a guy who I've never heard of, and he's writing this song for the end credits of The Running Man. And like, dude, like, okay, the song at the end of The Running Man is called Restless Heart, and it's by John Parr. Unbelievable. Yeah, he also wrote the theme for St. Elmo's Fire, which is great. Stan Bush wrote The Touch and Dare, both for the Transformers animated movie in 86. The Touch obviously showing up in Boogie Nights. I mean, like, there's a band called Touch that composes a song called Sweetest Victory for Rocky IV. It doesn't even make the movie, but the song is phenomenal.
So it's fantastic. They sound like Journey. That song is so good. They sound like Journey. By the way, that's another soundtrack. Rocky IV soundtrack, incredible. That is a workout soundtrack from top to bottom. That is a workout soundtrack. You take your breath during the Kenny Loggins Gladys Knight song, and then you go back to your workout after that. That is a great soundtrack to use for working out. And you're right. There were a lot of art. Like, look, that song at the beginning of Black Rain. That's an awesome song. That's an awesome song. That's what you ride a mullet on a motorcycle in New York to. The song in Days of Thunder, the more ballad song that's very reminiscent of Take My Breath Away. It's a fantastic song. Secret of My Success from Night Ranger is incredibly high-powered action song. Pat Benatar, Invincible for The Legend of Billie Jean. Fantastic songs. So there were some great music that was happening there that is a bit, at times could be cheesy, but at other times really fit the film.
But in the best possible way. Okay, you mentioned Michael Douglas, and this is one that I'd like to pick your brain on. This can be our topic we end on, because all right, so Michael Douglas, he produces Cuckoo's Nest, and he wins
Mhm.
the Oscar in 75. And then in the early to mid 80s, he starts to have the successes with Zemeckis, right? He gets Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile. By mid 80s, he's becoming like biggest movie star in the world status, right? Because he's got Wall Street in 87. I think it's the same year as as Fatal Attraction.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure Basic Instinct's like 92. So that run there of 10 years is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, for whatever reason, they wanted to cast this like mid 40s to late 40s guy in a bunch of erotic thrillers, which is like so bizarre and funny to think back to. Like Michael Douglas is like Mr. Erotic Thriller. Like that's like the genre of movie that made him most famous, right? Because
bro.
right, like a Disclosure, Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct. I feel like there's another one that I'm forgetting in there. What the fuck was it with Michael Douglas and these directors that they were like, this guy is both sexy and dangerous. Look at his mullet. Like,
here's what I'll tell you. I think film goers at that time were of older age. So a majority of the films that were successful, if you go back and look, a majority of the films were starred older. I mean, Sea of Love is 87, I think, and that's Pacino seducing Ellen Barkin. That is like Pacino, who you never want to see in a love scene ever. Even in Heat, it's awkward.
It's really awkward.
He can't kiss. It's weird to see him kiss. It's like, I don't get it. It's weird. Don't do that. But like, back at that time, those were the film goers that were spending the most amount of money at the theater. They were going to see these more mature adult actors because that's what they were catering to. And so those people spent the money, because at the time, the 80s, was all the yuppies and all the guys who have the money, guys and girls who have the money are these executives and whatever and doing whatever. So people were getting paid more. Right? Reagan was cutting taxes so mom and dad could go see these movies. And so they were looking for people that they were reflected by. Even Harrison Ford essentially looks 40 for quite some time during the 80s as well. And so, yes, Raiders of the Lost Ark, but he looks like 35 in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then by the time he gets to Witness and all these other films, he is of a certain age. So at that time, that's what was Michael Caine had a whole career in the 80s doing that. Alfie and not Alfie, sorry. God, I forget the name of that. Blame It on Rio. He is sexy as F in that movie. And so throughout the 80s, those were the kinds of people we wanted to see. Tom Cruise was the change. Tom Cruise was the transition. Yeah. The mid 80s, 86. That's when people are like, oh, wait, and then Swayze, Keanu, like just right after is when they start going younger. But I think the 80s, up until that point where you were saying, Ben, it's the transition from the 70s, who also starred, Hackman and all these people who were of a certain maturity in a lot of their films. They were kind of the residue into the mid 80s. And then it's Cruise and Keanu and The Outsider, Dylan, all that, Matt Dillon, all that stuff is when it starts to change to go younger. And the studios realize, if we make younger fare, then these kids who are now working at 15, 16, 17, 18 years old are going to come multiple times to see these movies.
I was thinking about actually growing out and doing the Douglas, doing the Wall Street. It's getting long in the back. It's starting to really getting bushy. So if I keep doing it, maybe I can really.
But it looks good, so it does look good. I like the curl hanging down.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, and even the way, I'm just gonna stay on Douglas for a second. Even the way Douglas talked, man, he just like something about. There was just something about the way he talked. It's 5 a.m. Bud Fox, money never sleeps. Like he just had this thing going that was just phenomenal. I almost wish that we still had movie stars that like. We're literally breaking in with mullets in their mid 40s. But anyway,
Tom Berenger, that's another one, right?
Yeah,
in the 80s, all through the Major League, Platoon, all through the 80s, and so we just wanted a mature guy to be in charge of things. That's how it was.
Some of the looks those guys had, like the mustaches and the big chill, amazing.
William Hurt, that's another one. Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Good. Well, John, I think that's a good thing for us to end on. Thanks for hanging out here on A Great Conversation on Nerds and Suits. I appreciate it. One more time, if folks want to find you, you already plugged Outlaw Nation. Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And I'm trying out this Twitch thing. Speaking of middle-aged guys on Twitch or doing young things, I'm trying it out on Twitch. The Outlaw Nation, all one word, lowercase together. Come and follow me there. I'm going to start dropping some streams in there, doing some shows in there. I have a show that I was originally going to call Rocha Unfiltered, but apparently I heard from some Action Army generals who who thought I was trying to bite what Ben and Drew are doing, and I had no idea. Like, I just always think it's all Action Army. I didn't know there was an Action Unfiltered show, so we'll be changing that name out of respect to these two gentlemen who are doing it for 11 months. So
that's absolutely hilarious. I didn't even hear you were going to call a show that, but we have been doing that for a while. So
yeah, I had no idea. So I mean, when they reached out to me, I was like, hey, I'm not trying to take anything from anybody. I'll change the name. Don't sweat it. It's not
Fair
a big
enough,
deal,
man. Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, hit subscribe, hit like, leave a comment below. This was an interesting interview, one that I really enjoyed doing. I look forward to doing, and down the line we'll bring John back if he's willing to come back. Check out his channel, and I'll be back with another episode of Song from the Scene next Wednesday. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you very soon.